Hey, folks, welcome back to the Carl Zahn Show. Thank you very much to all of you who continue to watch. Like and subscribe. That's a big help to us, even if you hit the little thumbs up button. There's no obligation. Nobody knows who you are. And it helps us out a lot as I get deeper into this and we learn about all the YouTube analytics, and of course the challenge of being on YouTube if you have a conservative viewpoint. So we already have a handicap. So any support you can give us is greatly appreciated. Happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there. I'm reminded every Father's Day how blessed I am with 5 kids, and they are all different. They're all their own people. They all had varying degrees of challenge, especially in their teen years. But I am reminded I'm very blessed with my kids and family. And one of the reasons it's always a little distressing to me to see this wandering away from the new generation having kids and family and stuff like that, because it is what life is all about. It'd be hard to imagine my life without kids at this stage of the game. So we have so much to get into this week. It is absolutely crazy out there. It's I did my Friday morning hit with Drew Klein this week on the morning update with Drew Klein in Manchester, New Hampshire. And I started by saying, if you listen closely, you hear like a clickety-clack in the background, and it gets louder and louder. And what that is the giant roller coaster we're on clicking and clacking its way to the top of a precipice before we fall off for what I think is going to be probably the roller coaster ride of a lifetime. And I think the whole thing may just fly off the tracks at some point. So I hear this distant clickety-clack as we ascend. I just feel like something big is going to happen between now and November. And in a way, I think it's happening now, and it may be happening in the form of lots of seemingly minor things. So we have a whole lot to get into this week. First and foremost has to be President Biden at the G7 summit. I'm sure everyone has seen clips of this now. And again, it goes against my innate sensibilities to mock and make fun of anyone elderly. You know, I'm rapidly approaching that myself. So it just goes against everything in my fiber. But I have such disdain for the Biden family that I can't help myself. And I also feel like they've brought it upon themselves. They're so power hungry and greedy and so demented that I just feel like it's fair game. Like you put your, in Joe Biden's case, you put your husband out there. In Hunter's case, you put your father out there, and this is what you get. And the sad thing is that the whole country, and indeed the world, is suffering because of it. So I'm sure anyone who pays attention has seen these clips of Joe Biden overseas with the Italian prime minister or president, whatever they call her, and she's quite the spitfire. You can tell she's kind of irritated through this whole visit. There was one scene where some paratroopers are parachuted in, and Biden goes wandering off, like watching these guys fold up their parachutes, and she has to go off screen to bring him back. So it's kind of like somebody brought an errant 5-year-old to your family cookout, and for some reason their parents are inept, and you end up having to watch the toddler. That was the dynamic I sensed between the Italian prime minister and having Biden there. It's like, it's like a child that you have to watch and make sure they don't touch a hot stove or, put their hand in a running lawnmower or whatever painfully stupid thing he might do next. And then all topped off by the president meeting the Pope, and the Babylon Bee had a fantastic headline. I only wish that I had thought of this. The Babylon Bee had a headline that Biden disappointed that huge scoop of ice cream turns out to be the Pope. It's a, it's a brilliant joke because if you haven't seen this, Biden is leaning in and he's not just touching the forehead of the Pope, but like pressing his head into the forehead of the Pope. It's the strangest thing. And you can see that even the Pope is uncomfortable and wondering, I don't know if Biden was trying to knock him off his little papal stool or what the heck was happening, but it is so utterly embarrassing. And meanwhile, across the world, we got Russian submarines and warships off the coast of Cuba, which by proxy means off the coast of Florida, Key West. I mean, think about that. And then you have the Russian president, Putin, who's kind of threatening a nuclear, going nuclear at some point because of our continued support in Ukraine and increasingly close to telling Ukraine, yes, you can launch our missiles into Russian territory. So you have this whole thing that's just like, it's like a pressure cooker that's, steam is escaping and the whole pot is just kind of shaking on the stove, and you have to wonder. And then you look at our leader who's overseas, mistaking the Pope with his white beanie as a scoop of vanilla ice cream, according to Babylon Bee, and it's probably not far off, and wandering off. He's like the Wanderer, the old 50s tune. So disturbing what's going on. It's almost hard to make fun of. There's so much there, but it's so dangerous. And the other thing that's happened over the past couple of weeks, again, this drives me crazy, and it might be unfair. I don't know. But during these trips to Paris, Jill Biden flew back from Paris to attend Hunter Biden's trial, his gun trial. And yes, we all know he was found guilty. I don't think it matters. I don't think anything's going to happen to him. I'm not even sure it should, because to be fair, how many people lie on their, I'm not saying it's right, but if I was going to defend Trump and call that a sham trial, I have to be fair and equitable and say the whole Hunter Biden thing with the gun. Much more interested to see how his tax evasion trial goes. That bothers me a lot more. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm also sure, he's not the first one and not the last one who ever checked no on the federal form to, are you using drugs or are you a drug addict when you buy a weapon? So he is the president's son. I get it. Nothing's going to happen. But the fact that the doctor, Jill Biden, flew all the way from Paris back here to attend court, just sit in a courtroom for her stupid son. And it's not like he's 12, by the way. I mean, I think anyone else would be like, Mom, please don't come to a trial. I'm, 50 years old or however old Hunter Biden is. Just not maybe a good look having mommy come to your court proceedings. Nonetheless, she flew back. And for those who don't know, I mean, it's kind of curious, but I'm a private pilot, so I know what it costs to fly little planes. And the cost of flying Air Force One, and this is without all the Secret Service protection and all that, but the aircraft itself, the maintenance, the crew, everything that has to go along with it. And of course, I suspect the shadow aircraft that have to accompany Air Force One, $177,000 an hour. So do the math on a trip from Paris back here. I think that trial was in California, if I'm not mistaken. And then back to Paris again. I just think about that. So think about the utter disregard for American taxpayer dollars. And this goes back to my complaint about the Bidens all along versus Trump, who didn't even take the paycheck for being president. And it's demonstrably true that being president cost Donald Trump money, probably almost bankrupted him, versus the Bidens, who just love the pomp and circumstance. I think Dr. Jill Biden, the more I see her now as she comes out of the shadows, the more contempt I have for her and how, utterly shallow she is. She was on The View, I think, last week talking about that this, Joe Biden is as sharp as he's ever been, and people just don't appreciate all he does and his work ethic and how, brilliant he is and all of that. And I'm thinking to myself, Dr. Jill, I mean, well, we all know she's not an actual doctor. That was just a doctorate that was awarded to her. But if she was a doctor, and just imagine that she's a doctor and you bring your elderly grandfather or father to her and, geez, doctor, my grandfather was licking the Pope's head because she thought she was a scoop of vanilla ice cream. And he tends to go wandering off a lot. He routinely walks like he has a load in his pants. He more and more now just freezes at any moment. If you saw him at this ridiculous Juneteenth celebration, that famous clip, now famous, of just Joe Biden utterly frozen in time next to, the utterly obnoxious Kamala Harris and her husband. There's a case study. And then next to him, a black man in a sequins dress. And if you look at that ridiculous photo of Juneteenth, that's everything that average Americans just abhor about the whole woke thing and all their policies. It's a postcard. It's the White House Christmas postcard. Joe Biden standing there like a 5-year-old, frozen, just staring off. Everyone else is swaying back and forth, and Kamala Harris is doing her stupid Elaine from Seinfeld dance. She's just another morbidly inept person. To think that she's a Tumblr click away from the presidency should, well, let's just say, should that ever happen, we'll all be pooping our pants and walking around like Joe Biden, myself included. I'm just trying to imagine Kamala Harris at the helm. Russia, floating submarines and warships around, and we're going to have her at the helm. Fantastic. So yes, Dr. Jill Biden flying herself back and forth to Paris at the tune of, several $1 million of taxpayer money, utter disregard for the expense. And again, so that she can sit and intimidate people, I suppose, at her son's gun trial. It is so unseemly. In the interim, another story out just this morning. And, Joe Biden's open border, when, of course, they had all this hoopla a few weeks ago about he's closing the border, and this is enough's enough, 3.5 years into his term. And, of course, nothing's changed. Just this morning, an illegal immigrant from El Salvador, and he's accused of murder in El Salvador, has now been accused of killing a mother of 5 in Maryland. And that just happened like today or yesterday. Beautiful young woman, mother of 5. And so Biden's open border, kind of the gift that keeps on giving. It's really amazing to me that we tolerate it. It's just stunning to me. And, everybody gives Trump a hard time because he's out, always saying that, we're bringing people from mental insane asylums, and everybody kind of busts his chops about using the term insane asylum, which, yes, goes back to like the 40s or 50s. He does it deliberately, all right? You notice during the interview with Dr. Phil, every time he said mental institution or insane asylum, they would put a graphic up with a little star that said psychiatric facility. Well, you know what? Nobody gives a shit about the semantics, okay? They're insane people. They're warped people. They're entering their prisons. And yes, they're insane asylums, psychiatric facilities. Who cares what title you give it? It's the action and the predictable result. I mean, I thought the interview with Dr. Phil was fantastic. I give him credit for doing that. But the fact that every time Trump said mental institution and insane asylum, they felt compelled to put this little graphic up, say psychiatric facility. Yeah, that's fantastic. This is exactly why right now China is building a $3.5 billion port in Peru. Peru, rich with natural resources, minerals, So this is exactly why the serious countries around the world with serious leaders, not good leaders, but like Trump says, smart people, whether you like them or not, or think they're obviously Putin, Xi, Kim Jong-un, bad people. But to Trump's point, smart, savvy. And that's exactly why China is building a $3.5 billion port in Peru right now, world class. While we're over here worried about the semantics of calling, a psychiatric facility an insane asylum, and whether or not transgenders should be able to compete on women's swim team. And we're so troubled with all this laughably peripheral issues, social issues, that the whole world just must be having a field day with this. If you're another country and you hate America, this has been like the best 4 years of your life. It really has. And for the rest of us, it's been like the most arduous, painful 4 years of our life. I'm happy to see all these people that are coming around now, and you're seeing it more and more. Just a few days ago, there was some California billionaire, and I can't remember his name, and even if I could, I can't pronounce it. But he's a lifelong Democrat. He's given tons of money to Democrats, and he now is supporting Trump, and said in this interview that he was so surprised when he met Donald Trump in person. It changed his view of Trump completely. He found him personable, charismatic, polite, smart, funny. And I appreciate that. And I do appreciate the people that kind of the turning tide. But there's also part of me that's, you're the Johnny-come-latelys. And up until now, you were 100% in for the other side. And the country and anybody with like common sense has been punished this last 4 years of Biden. It's been absolute punishment, if for no other reason, and having to stand by and watch all this, right? So it's almost like someone, hog tying you and tying your hands behind your back and your ankles, and then, tickling you with a feather under your nose, or making you watch somebody beat the crap out of a family member or something like that. It's that level of torture for most of us, this whole Biden administration. So I appreciate the Johnny-come-latelys, and I appreciate the turning tide. Better late than never. But I'm always a little reticent to just give them a free pass, because these were the people that brought all of this on us, and they did so completely over Trump derangement syndrome. I talked about on my very first episode of this program, the first time I met Donald Trump, and in 2015, I believe, at a media-only private function, and I had the very same revelation that when I saw him in person, I had a chance to speak to him for 5 or 10 minutes afterwards, privately, my impression of the man just changed completely. So I appreciate what this guy is saying, that meeting him in person, and he went on to say everybody should do that, or everyone should have a chance to do that. So I get it, because I had the exact same experience and reaction. I just wish a lot of these people had found out earlier, because even if Trump wins, even if he makes it to November without some, the clickety-clack of the roller coaster I mentioned and going over the edge here, even if all of that happens, I think a lot of irreparable damage has been done during this Biden administration, culturally and otherwise. I don't see how. Yes, I want Trump to win. I want leadership. I want common sense leadership, all of that. But I don't see how you repair 4 years of an open border. Everyone's heard they found ISIS terrorists in the country a few weeks ago, last week, 7 of them. We know there's a lot more than that. That's not a surprise. So 4 years of open border, with people from other countries, insane asylums. And yes, I'm going to use insane asylum. I love it, especially if it irritates anybody on the other side. 4 years of open borders, everything that's that's irreparable damage. We won't even know the true cost of that for probably 20 years on our infrastructure, our cities, our schools, our hospitals, all of that. And then the utter lunacy of all these policies that support that in the meantime. It's really crazy. And going back to Father's Day and raising kids, if you're a father and you have young kids and you go through teen years and you go through all of that stuff, and yeah, there's going to be situations with your kids where there's a predictable outcome to certain behavior. And as much as you might warn them or try to steer them the right way, sometimes, all of us just have to learn the hard way. That was certainly that's how I rolled when I was 18. I learned everything the hard way, despite the salient advice of my late parents. And I guess those lessons stick, but it's still, a lot of this is just going to be irreparable damage to the country. The open borders, all the people that were here, the abysmal withdrawal from Afghanistan, that's something I always go back to because we tend to forget about that. The service people that were killed on the way out, the humiliating withdrawal, people falling off the aircraft, and then on top of that, $80 billion worth of high-tech, brand-new military hardware left behind. And, as I've mentioned here, but other people always forget to mention, we gave them Bagram Air Force Base that we built. It's on over 800 acres of land, has its own hospital, mall. It's got the longest runway in the world. I think the runway I heard is 11 feet thick. So this was just a magnificent airport that we now gave to the Chinese. So just if Biden had done everything else subsequently in his presidency really well, just that one chapter of Afghanistan, the damage to the country and our standing in the world is immeasurable. And of course, unfortunately, that was just the tip of the iceberg, or in Biden's case, the tip of the ice cream cone, otherwise known as the Pope's head. So Biden at G7, Trump continues to do these just brilliant campaign events. He was at yesterday in Detroit at the 180 Church, which is a very famous church in the hood of Detroit. Trump just arrived there to a largely African-American audience. Pastor was there, Byron Donalds, all these people. Trump walks in and they just love him. It's just amazing. And again, superimpose this, Dr. Jill Biden going back to The View where she said, this is not about age because Donald Trump and my husband are the same age, essentially within a year. Yeah, you're right. It's not about age. It's about competency. We talked last week's show about Bill Anders, a former Apollo 8 astronaut who died in an airplane crash at 90, not just any airplane, flying a T-46 Texan, which is a handful of an airplane. And one could say, well, he's probably too old to be flying. But I saw an interview done with him just a few weeks before that. The guy is like dead on, man. He's like, he's striding across the airport tarmac in his flight suit, and this reporter can hardly keep up with him. I mean, he's marching and mentally just all there. So it's not about age because we all age differently, right? Some people, unfortunately, fall into Alzheimer's, in their late 40s and 50s. None of us control that. So, Dr. Jill Biden, her assertion that this whole thing is unfair because Trump and Biden are the same age it's a fallacious argument, and we all know that. She can play that all day long, Your husband, Jill, was never that bright to begin with. He's always been a couple sandwiches short of a picnic, and now he's, not even a sandwich. So it's not about age. It's just a fallacious bullshit argument. And as I said, the more I see of her, because she has to come out and defend him, the more obnoxious she becomes and the more vapid. And, it's so obvious what her game is. She loves the power. She loves the money. She loves being able to fly Air Force One back to California to go on a hunter's trial and screw the taxpayers, if another $5 million for you taxpayers who can barely afford your food bill and your gas, Awful, awful people, the Biden family, like literally like trailer park boys. And then finally, California, not surprising, Rubio's Coastal Grill. This is a very famous chain in California, restaurant chain, closing 48 of their stores because of the minimum wage. Gavin Newsom's minimum wage wet dream of $20 an hour. And since the increase to $20 an hour in California, they have lost over 10,000 jobs at fast food restaurants, which continue to close at a steady clip. So again, stupid policies, predictable outcome, outcry following the predictable outcome, and now more and more people fleeing California. And see more and more people of influence coming about and really criticizing California policies and all of that. But these are all people who routinely voted for Gavin Newsom. They routinely voted Democrat. So again, I'm glad to see the shift, but the Johnny-come-latelys, it's a little painful. What did you think was going to happen when you forced McDonald's to pay $20 an hour to people flipping cheeseburgers? What did you think was going to happen? It gets passed on to the consumer. They can't afford it. The restaurant closes, and ultimately, you lose a whole bunch of jobs that are supposed to be starting jobs for kids, for teenagers, to learn a work ethic. You know, and there's a place for that. There's a value to that. So we took that value and disintegrated it over Gavin Newsom, who's just like, half man, half reptile. I swear he has a forked tongue. One of these days he's going to, stick it out by accident, and we're going to see he has a forked tongue and probably a tail, a scaly tail. It's like the most slippery guy, unbelievable. So all these policies, predictable outcomes. When the outcome comes, everybody gasps in horror. And for the rest of it, it was like entirely predictable. So fascinating times that we're in. We are living through history, so there's that part of it. It's really interesting. It's just going to be so fascinating over these next few months to see how this all unfolds. I remind everybody I promised to eat a live ant on air if the debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump actually took place. So we're getting dangerously close to that event. I still maintain it's not going to happen. If it does happen, I suggest that Donald Trump come out wearing a white beanie like the Pope and see if he could just maybe get Joe Biden to lick his head. Other than that, if the debate happens, I will hold true to my word, and I will eat a live ant on the air on the show following the presidential debate. That's not going to happen. Donald Trump, rocking it, baby. 180 Church in Detroit. So smart. The Democrats' hair are on fire. He's getting the African-American vote, as he should, because as he pointed out correctly, he's done more for that community than any president since Abraham Lincoln. And they're finally figuring it out that the Democrats have wanted nothing more than your vote, keep your young women pregnant by, different fathers, keep you in the hood, keep you under the thumb of the Democrats. Trump lifted the hood off of that. If Trump rode off into the sunset tomorrow, he would still be a historic figure, if for nothing else, in taking the curtain off of the Republicans, the Democrats, Washington in general, the deep state, the scam that we all knew was there. If Trump disappeared tomorrow, everything he's done to this point is just invaluable to the country. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to my better half for the great Father's Day shirt. Keep the blue side up. You all know what that is in reference to now. So that was a great find. And like I said, happy Father's Day. Thank you to my better half for the gift. Thank you to my kids. I'm a blessed man. And I hope all of you are that way too. And don't forget. See you next time. Keep the blue side up.